Welcome to Consulting from the Couch, where we explore the people, ideas, and leadership shaping our communities and our lives, one story at a time. Today's guest is someone who embodies what it means to lead with a purpose. Scott Riggs is not only a seasoned finance professional with more than 35 years of experience, but he is also a tireless community advocate. As the founder of Capital Connection and a key leader in Jacksonville and Onslow County's economic development efforts, Scott has helped unlock funding, foster local entrepreneurship, and bring game-changing innovations like Project Frontier to life. Welcome, Scott, and thank you for joining us today.
Steve, I appreciate it, my friend. It's always good to be with you, and just thanks for this opportunity to sit down and have a little time on the couch.
Absolutely. So before we get going, take a couple minutes and tell the listeners about Scott Riggs.
Well, there's not a whole lot to say other than had humble beginnings, grew up in a family of five locally here in Onslow County, up in the northern part of the county, a little place called Richlands, North Carolina. I was very blessed to have mom and dad that instilled certain values, introduced us to faith early in our lives, and work ethic as well. I was telling this story to a friend of mine not too long ago, talking about childhood and things like that, and I can remember coming home from playing in the yard. I was about 11 years old, and I came home playing in the yard with some friends, and the neighbor said, "Do you want to earn some money this summer while you're out of school?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." And so it was barn and tobacco. So I got my first job in tobacco at 11 years old.
And knowing now, or knowing then what you know now, or vice versa, however you say it, working in tobacco is like working in the logwoods, which I had a lot of experience doing growing up. Okay, exactly. But it taught you hard work, and it taught you what you probably didn't want to do later on in life.
It did. Yeah. It did. Absolutely did.
Well, that's great. Well, look, man, before we get going and I start asking you the questions, first, I want to tell you congratulations, man. You've had a very eventful first half of the year. In April, during National Small Business Week, you were awarded the 2025 Citizenship and Service Award by the Jacksonville-Onslow Chamber of Commerce. And later in the month, you received the 2025 United Way Golden Rule Lightkeepers Volunteer of the Year Award. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Kudos. And that's one of the reasons you're on the podcast, besides being my buddy, man. That's one of the reasons you're on the podcast, because leadership through volunteerism. Yeah, man, that's awesome. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I've always been taught and still think today that giving back is one of the best things that we can do.
Let's talk about service. You've grown up and you've worked and lived and raised a family here in Onslow County for 30 plus years. What has inspired you and your long-term commitment to volunteerism? And specifically, we're going to hone in on a lot of your economic development and community development areas in Jacksonville and Onslow County.
So kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier in my life, I remember there was a time, my dad was a career banker, and I followed in his footsteps, as a lot of people know here locally. But I can remember the aspect of giving back and just helping others and not seeking any recognition, just loving people and just serving people. I can remember getting in the car with him. He never said anything about it. We went to the Piggly Wiggly grocery store in Richlands, and he bought, I don't know, seemed like dozens of bags of groceries. I'm sure it was less than that, but he bought groceries, and we my sister and I, and my brother was really small then, my sister and I, we rode with him to this humble little house on the backside of town, and he got the groceries out of the back of the car, went up and put them on the porch, knocked on the door, and came back out the car and sat in the car. And I remember seeing a shadow figure just come and look out and just throw a hand up, and he threw his hand up, and we backed out of the driveway and went home. We never really said anything about it, but just that act of kindness and just that connection just kind of resonated with me, and that's kind of how I grew up.
It had to be pretty impactful. You made a great comment about doing it and not looking or seeking recognition or looking for accolades and things of that nature. That's the true spirit of giving and giving back, right?
I believe that. Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And for us, growing up here in our community, working with the businesses that we worked, you in the banking industry, me in the electric utility industry, our businesses were cornerstones of the community, did a lot of things for the community, and it was only natural that between our upbringings and going to work where we worked, it was just a natural fit.
And I agree. And early in my career, my first banking job, my manager, my mentor at the time, he was active in Rotary. Another mentor of mine was active in JC's. And JC's was a younger person's organization and a junior chamber of commerce. And I got involved with JC's right out of college in my first professional role or banking role. And I met some really, really good people, and just their acts of kindness, the way that they it was like it was second nature just to provide help and hope for kids and for other people. And it just kind of carried over, and it resonated with me, and it's just became part of my lifestyle. And that's just part of who I am now.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Let's talk about your role as chairman of the Jacksonville Economic Development Loan Fund Committee.
Yes.
What sparked the idea to launch this community business loan fund? And you may need to explain it a little bit.
Okay.
And what gap was it designed to fill?
So the Community Business Loan Fund is part of what's called the Jacksonville Onslow Economic Development Partnership, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. And the idea, really, I've got to give credit to former Executive Director Mark Sutherland for bringing me in and talking to me about the concept and the idea. And he had conversations with some other leadership within economic development, and he told me that my name had come up about the potential to spearhead that just because of my background. And I started kind of doing my own thing, which I guess we'll talk about later. Yep. And so that he brought me in, we talked about it, and I thought it was a great idea. So the concept, the idea behind the Community Business Loan Fund is to do exactly what you said. It's a gap filler. It's not meant to compete with banks or other finance institutions. It's meant to be that platform for folks that maybe need some assistance in starting their business or expanding their business. Maybe they need they're to a point in their business they're ready to buy a location and they don't have all the down payment, for example, or they need some equipment, or they need a little bit of working capital to hire some people, that kind of thing. But they're not quite what I would call lender ready or bank ready. But it's a viable, reasonable situation, and so we take an application. We have a committee, we review that information, and if it makes sense, we try to find a way to help people access the capital. And I mean, it's not meant to be a stop all or to be the main source for people. Our parameters are a minimum of $10,000 and a maximum of $75,000. We're probably going to drop that down to $50,000, which kind of correlates to a microloan space. Mm-hmm. But I find that in our area, that amount of capital helps a lot of small businesses and kind of a good fit for a lot of small businesses. So that's in a nutshell kind of what's intended to do and what it's intended to be. And
with this particular loan fund, the Truist Foundation and Duke Energy, they seeded the loan fund back in 2022. Can you provide an update maybe or a progress report, maybe how many loans
Sure.
you guys have made or
Sure.
or grants or whatever to date and where you stand? You kind of just told us potentially about lowering the threshold. Just provide us a little update if you could.
Yeah, sure. So the Truist Foundation, very thankful for their existence and their involvement. Again, I give credit to Mark Sutherland and to Terry Ashby, who at the time was at Truist here in Jacksonville. And we were able to apply for a grant to the Truist Foundation. They granted the request, initial seed capital of $100,000. And that money went to 3 specific credit requests that were all new businesses. One of them is actually in downtown Jacksonville and thriving very, very well. I love to see that. We patronize them sometimes. There are a couple others that are doing well themselves. We've had no pushback on any of the credits that we did, and all of them went to either secure equipment or to provide working capital, ultimately help people to hire positions. And so all that money was, with the exception of maybe a couple of $1,000s, was all deployed in 3 credits that are all performing and have had good success stories.
That's awesome, man.
And then Lauren Wargo from Duke Energy, that Duke Energy grant, that was in November of last year. And Steve, that was one of probably the best moments of my adult life, was to be a part of a grant situation where we took that money and we broke it up into 9 $2,500 grants. And just the applications and the stories behind those applications and just seeing what people are trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish. And for that money to go to such good and to help people maybe get over the hump or get to the next level in their entrepreneurial or business journey, was just fabulous. And I'm just very thankful for that opportunity.
I want to talk about that a little bit, because when we think about economic development or job creation, we want to go to a grand scale, right? We want to say,
a lot of times, yeah.
We say, hey, we're going to add a FedEx distribution center and it's going to bring 300 jobs. And maybe it's because my dad was a small business owner and he was in business for 50 plus years. In my opinion, the foundation of this country, the foundation of Jacksonville, Onslow, the foundation is based on small business.
You're right. I mean, Jacksonville and Onslow County is a picture of the national scale. I'd say 85+% of all hiring and business activity in this country is small business.
Yeah, and that $2,500 grant that you made to those small businesses, it was probably like $100 million.
Could have been
to FedEx or to whomever to fill in the blank.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been. It could have been just a lot of times small business, just those little, what I'll call droplets of capital.
Just that little nudge.
That's a little nudge can get them to the next level, to where they're able to hire the right person. They're able to put in the right piece of equipment to help them go to another level, or increase their inventory, or anything like that. That gets to, that's a really good way to look at it. I think that little nudge to get them to that point of where maybe sometimes it's the difference between success and failure.
And we're going to come back, because I think that plays a vital role, what we just talked about and what you're doing now. And we're going to get to that in a few minutes. Let's talk a little bit more, though, about, I mentioned Project Frontier in the introduction. Tell us a little bit about that project. I know my former employee that I retired from, Jones Onslow, we were involved with that, with some grant monies to help with some of the pre-construction, getting the land ready and stuff like that.
Sure.
But specifically, what was the vision behind the initiative, and what was the impact you hoped it had on our community? And it's actually having an impact, if you want to talk about what the business is that's coming there.
Sure. So initially, this conversation came up, as it does a lot of times in economic development circles, to what we've talked about a little bit here before, about workforce development, job creation, tax base, things, quality of life kind of stuff. And in this particular instance, Onslow County, Jacksonville didn't really have what's referred to in economic development circles as product. And when I refer to product, I'm talking about, sometimes you go into communities, you'll see these, what's referred to maybe as a shell building, like where maybe an industrial or building has been built. And it's intended to be able to hopefully entice a business or an industry to relocate and bring jobs and bring opportunity to that community. We really didn't have any product at that time. And so a building committee was developed and stood up within Jacksonville Onslow Economic Development. And we started having some conversations about some ideas and some things, and it kind of rose from the ashes. And we have a lot of partners within economic development that are local partners that are public and private, municipal, like governments like the city of Jacksonville, Onslow County, Jones Onslow, EMC, and others that are viable amazing partners to economic development. And so one thing led to another. We were talking about it. The city had some ideas. It just kind of kept evolving. Next thing we know, because of the partnerships and the collaboration, steps that kept being taken, it just evolved. And next thing we knew, there was a very interested party that wanted to come to Jacksonville. They had expansion plans in this part of the world, and it's Amazon. And it wound up being a initial 100,000 square feet of facility. It's a last mile facility. If anybody's familiar with the process, that last mile facility is where product that maybe you've ordered online gets from a larger distribution center, it gets filtered down to a last mile facility, and then it gets trucked out from that last mile facility. And there's several of those that are going up in East North Carolina. And Jacksonville was one of those. And if you've been by that area, overall Frontier Road in the Williamsburg area, there's a lot of building over there now.
And I joke about that with my daughter. She lives in New York. She's an attorney in New York. And during COVID, she moved from New York. She was still in law school at the time, but she moved from New York down here. She was able to take law classes online like many students were. And she set up here in the basement, actually. But she had become very accustomed to ordering from Amazon. Mm-hmm. She lived in an apartment in downtown New York City, Manhattan. And if she needed toothpaste, she would order toothpaste from Amazon. She would order washing powder from Amazon.
Yeah.
That didn't stop when she moved down here. She kept ordering those things, and literally the FedEx guy or the UPS guy, whoever, was delivering to our house every day. And I joked with her when I told her that this Amazon distribution center was coming here. They looked at data from COVID when you were here and decided to build a facility because it was the Spencer Goodson Distribution Center.
So you see this one address?
Yeah, that is exactly right.
It's the catalyst for this whole project.
Catalyst for the whole project, right. So thank you, Spencer. So let's talk about measuring success. So how do you measure success for Onslow County's economic development, whether it's, and I'm just going to throw out job creation, diversity of business ownership, community reinvestment. How do you define success?
Well, I think all of those items play into it. But for me, I think it's quality of life.
Yeah, I agree.
It's what the citizenry is able to experience in regards to job opportunities. It's a well balanced live, work, play kind of scenario. You choose to live in a community because of several reasons. One, you feel safe. Another one, you feel like you can derive a good living from an income source. You have friends and you have a social life. There's activities, there's things you can do recreationally and things like that. And, Jacksonville for a while has been experiencing what I refer to as growing pains. We have the luxury of having a lot of federal dollars that flow here on a monthly basis. That's a lot of communities don't have. And so we've kind of got a baseline to build from. And at the same time, we're in between two North Carolina ports, one to the south and one to the northeast. And so we're kind of in a conundrum a little bit maybe from a transportation perspective. But, all those things are looked at, highways, rails, sea, all that stuff gets looked at. And if you really take a look at strategically where we're located, there's a reason why Camp Lejeune and New River Air Station and Camp Johnson and all are strategically placed here. Okay. And the other thing is, we have on the private side, I think there's been more of an embracing of the assets that we have and what we have to offer. And what I'm seeing right now from a quality of life perspective, I think it's manifesting in relationships between city and county partners, corporate partners on the private side, and people that want to see that quality of life be raised in our area. And I think it's happening.
I would agree. And if you listen to this podcast 1 time, 10 times, you will probably hear me say this in every podcast. You mentioned about partnerships. And it's about relationships. It's about building relationships, whether it's in business or personal lives or whatever. And I think over the last several years, you and I, our career paths have kind of paralleled each other. Where we are today or where we have been 2 or 3 years ago, getting to that point, that's not where we were 30 years ago, 25 years ago.
I agree.
Yeah. And I think that plays a big role in it. Last question about volunteerism and leadership, and then we're going to shift gears and talk about your business. As a volunteer leader deeply involved in his community, what fuels your motivation? And how do you manage, more importantly, I think I know what fuels your motivation, but how do you manage your time between your business, the volunteer opportunities that you do decide to participate in, and your family?
The word that comes to mind for me, Steve, is grace, because my wife has a lot of grace. My
understand, man. Understand.
And my kids have grown up in it. Just for me, it's almost like getting up and putting your feet on the floor in the morning. You're just thankful that happened. But just find what you're passionate about and what makes you happy, and find a way to help other people feel that happiness. I use an acrostic in my life. It's interesting you use the word fuel, because that's the acrostic that I use is a type of fuel, and it's coal, COAL. And under the C, I look at communication, character, and capacity. If it wasn't for my calendar, that gives me my capacity, because everything has to go in the calendar. If it doesn't go in the calendar, it probably doesn't get done. The O in coal is for organization. You're just having a mindset of putting things in some type of order so you can try to accomplish those things, and be intentional about it, and have a desire to want to make those things kind of happen and participate. The A stands for attitude. I think, just mentioned mindset. I think it's important to have the right mindset and have an attitude of servanthood and being willing to participate and take action. And then the L part, that stands for just living. We have to live this life every day, and what better way than to not only make sure that your family's taken care of and that your constituents are taken care of in your business or at your job, but your neighbors and your friends and people in the community that hopefully can have a better day today than they had yesterday.
That's an awesome way to look at it, man. That's awesome. So before we do transition to your business, I'm going off script here, and I'm going to hit you with something.
Okay.
So a few weeks ago, and you might have mentioned this earlier, a few weeks ago, a good friend of yours, a former boss of yours, and I would say probably a mentor of yours,
yes,
Buddha Howard, passed away.
Yes.
Can you talk to me about the influence that Buddha had not only on your career but also on your life?
Well, you got me.
I got you, didn't I?
You got me in the feels there, man.
I know, man. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit you about this.
It's okay. It's okay. No, that's good. I mean, Buddha Howard was one of a kind. He was kind of quiet, but he himself was a mover and a shaker. He was the kind of guy that was behind the scenes. He didn't want to be in the forefront. He didn't want to have the limelight on him. He was just a doer, and he was a facilitator. He would, he had connections, and he'd make the phone calls, or he'd show up, or whatever the case may be. But yes, he definitely was a very, very strong professional mentor to me. He gave me the opportunity to make a transition in Jacksonville at a time that was appropriate for me and my family. His leadership style was, he was a very good listener. He was just one of those people that you really enjoyed being around, and he carried a big stick, but it didn't have to have a lot of noise and a lot of sound to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
And I really feel for his family. Buddha was instrumental in economic development, probably in that transition time, 2013, 2014, 2015. He was heavily involved in Rotary. He lived by the Rotary motto, and it was evident in his family. I had the privilege of being able to attend his funeral service down in Southport a couple of Fridays ago, and it was just the outpouring of love from that community for that man was amazing.
You can say a lot about somebody, and when I leave this earth, it's pretty simple. But the thing you could talk a lot about Buddha. You can say this about that, about whatever. But in the way I would say that Buddha was just a good dude, man. He was just a good dude.
That's a good summary of Buddha Howard. He's just a good dude.
He was just a good dude, man.
Yep.
So
that hits the nail on the head for him.
So anyway, let's shift gears, and we'll talk about your business. Capital Connections started in May of 21. What motivated you to transition into the commercial lending consultant space, and how did those 3.5 decades of banking continue to shape your approach today?
Yeah, so after I transitioned away from corporate world and out of banking itself, a few weeks after, I actually was starting to get a few phone calls from some former clients just asking questions about processes and certain things about how to go about approaching scenarios. And I just told them, I said, well, guys, I'm not there anymore. So I really, all I can tell you is what I would do and what my experience tells me in that situation. And I had one client, or former client in particular, that needed something, and it just wasn't going to be a fit at the bank. So I had some other connections that I made over my career, and I reached out to one of those connections, and he said, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I can help him." And he was in the same space that I've gotten into, which is commercial debt brokerage and equity brokerage and that type of thing. And he took the client, and I introduced them and made the connection, and things just went from there, and it wound up to being a very good situation for both of them. And so the guy that I referred to, the broker I referred the business to, he called me a couple of weeks later, and he said, "Scott," he said, that was a really good referral. He said, "Why don't you do this?" He said, "What are you doing now?" And I told him that I really wasn't doing anything. He said, "You would be really good at this." He says, "You got the experience." He says, "You know what to look for." He said, I think about it. So that's what I did. I started thinking about it, talked to my wife, and we birthed Capital Connections. And so that's what we do. We focus on commercial lending consultation and commercial debt brokerage and equity placement services. And over the last 4 years, we've had the opportunity to build multiple relationships nationwide. We've actually gone international now.
You and I were talking about that last week.
We're actually working on a couple of projects that are international now. And just to build those relationships and continue just using the process that I mentioned earlier, my cold process, and, setting myself up every day with, I start my day out with a devotion every day and get my attitude right first, and then attack my day and a bit at the time. And it's just turned into something that I never really thought that it would, and I'm very thankful.
In 4 years, I know you've got some great stories. I know you would have some great success stories from the bank as well, but pick one, if you can, just one. Tell me a nice success story over the last 4 years, man. Something that we talked about, those $2,500 mini grants or whatever, something that just made you feel good.
Well, there's a lot. There's a lot.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
But one that just kind of comes to mind that I'll just, they shall remain nameless to protect the innocent. But there's a local entrepreneur. She's just the epitome of a dynamo. She is one of those types of personalities. She'll get in the crowd with the bull. She'll look at the bull in the eye, and the bull comes out, or she just holds her hands out, grabs him by the horns, and just takes over. And in the last couple of years, I've seen her, her story kind of is a good one. She's a former Marine. That's how she got to the area. She went through the COVID period, and she had gotten into remodeling homes and trying to do a little house flipping and things like that. And she learned along the way. Of course, COVID didn't help, but when she would try to reach out to subcontractors or people to help her to get through the process, she was having a hard time getting people to show up on time and get things done the way she wanted them. So that take the bull by the horns mentality, she went and got her general contractor's license on her own. And she has since, from that point, she started building homes. She has gotten into building her own commercial real estate. She's an entrepreneur. She's helping people right now today feel better by giving back to them and allowing them to use her facility to help them. She's just an up and coming, and she doesn't stop. And to have been a part of helping her along the way in some consultation and some capital resources, and just being a partner coming alongside her and helping her navigate the process will always be something that'd be special.
Kind of wrapping this thing up, what's one practical way that they can get involved and make a tangible impact in their community?
I think we talked about it a little bit earlier, but there are organizations and there's ways. I mean, you can certainly Google search or Bing search or whatever type of browser you use. You can go and look for things to do. But, if it's faith-based, there's always something in the community that can be done through church-affiliated or faith-based organizations. If you're, I think going to find something that you're passionate about and you want to be involved with, like if it's youth sports. I mean, look at this community from what it was. We were talking about 15, 20, 25 years ago, what it was and what it is now. Youth sports has exploded. I mean, we've gone from just like baseball and basketball and soccer to now there's volleyball, there is lacrosse. There's all kinds of things that you can do to help. And kids are always looking for mentors and they're also looking for volunteers to help in that situation. United Way is another one. There's what's called Volunteer Onslow. You can sign up for volunteering through that. And if, there's just a multitude of things that you can do, but I think it's just being intentional and just looking. If you look and ask questions, especially if it's in the volunteer space, you're going to get an answer of, yeah, you can come help us and we'll find a way to make it work.
Volunteers are always needed, but I think you make a tremendously great point about something that you're passionate about. If you're passionate about it and you volunteer in that space that you're passionate about, people will see that.
They will.
People will see, hey, he's excited to be here. Hey, she's excited to be here, as opposed to potentially just checking a box.
I agree. And it's, to see a kid's face light up because, you were there, you were present, you were, because you took action and took that step to be involved, to see that family or that individual be able to get connected with resources that they need to help them move to the next chapter of their life, whatever the case may be. I mean, that stuff is priceless and it's invaluable and it's very rewarding. And I hope people take advantage of doing stuff like that.
Well, Scott, this was awesome, man. I appreciate it a bunch.
Brother, I appreciate you. It's always good to see you and be with you.
I just appreciate the time you've given me. Listen, Scott Riggs, he's a clear example of how business expertise and community service can come together to create real lasting change. He's proving that volunteer leadership and strategic thinking go hand in hand. So if today's episode has inspired you to get involved or invest in your local community, take some of Scott's advice that he didn't say on the podcast here, but I did some research and I read it somewhere. Start where you are, use what you know, and always find a way to serve.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I read that when I was researching you. So real quickly, I do want you, if there's small businesses in the community, in the area, and they may be in need of your service, this is your little shameless plug, 30 seconds, man, so take it.
Nice, sure. I appreciate that. So if you're a business owner and you're in need of some capital, the bank's you're not where you need to be with the bank just yet, reach out to us. We are online at www.rsriggsassociates.com. I can be reached at 910-340-2306. You can also find us on Facebook at Capital Connections, and we're on LinkedIn at Capital Connections as well.
Yeah, and we'll put all that stuff in the show notes when the podcast comes out. So, Scott, listen, thank you again, man. And listeners, thank you. We appreciate you taking the time to listen to this episode of Consulting from the Couch. And be sure to follow us by going to blcconsultingllc.com. and leave a quick review or share it with someone who also loves to hear just about great leadership stories in our communities. So until next time, I'm Steve Goodson, and talk soon.